Before anything remarkable can happen, there is always a moment of recognition. It is quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it is profound, the realization that the path ahead is not only challenging, but fundamentally unfamiliar. Most people never pause to recognize this moment because they are too busy seeking certainty, comfort, or validation. But if you are about to pull off the unimaginable, this moment, the pause of awareness, is the gateway. Awareness is not merely seeing the surface of your circumstances, it is seeing the invisible structures of your own mind, the subtle patterns that shape your fears, your desires, and your limitations. To act in a truly extraordinary way, you must first confront the truth of who you are, without excuses or illusions. This is where many falter. It is easier to blame external circumstances, to tell yourself that the world is unfair, or that others are holding you back. But if you hope to achieve something the world labels unimaginable, you cannot afford this. Awareness demands honesty, a ruthless, tender, and precise honesty. You must examine the ways in which you have unconsciously sabotaged yourself, the ways you have limited your own possibilities without realizing it. And you must do this without judgment, because shame and self-recrimination do not illuminate, they obscure. Think of awareness as a kind of inner microscope. It magnifies not just the obvious obstacles, the lack of resources, the complexity of the challenge, but also the subtle hidden dynamics that dictate your behavior. The patterns of avoidance, distraction, or self-doubt that quietly govern much of your life are laid bare when you bring full attention to them. This is not an intellectual exercise alone. It is deeply psychological, almost spiritual in its depth. It is the recognition that you are both the architect and the prisoner of your own experience. And it is only from this clarity that meaningful action can emerge. Awareness also entails recognizing the inevitability of uncertainty. To step into the unimaginable is to step into a space where rules are incomplete, where outcomes are unknown, and where the safety nets you rely on may not exist. It is natural to recoil from this. Our minds are wired to avoid risk, to seek predictability. Yet extraordinary achievement requires a tolerance, even an embrace of the unknown. Awareness does not eliminate fear, it gives you the capacity to move forward despite it. It allows you to see fear not as an enemy, but as a guidepost, a signal that you are approaching the edge of what you currently comprehend. And so, awareness precedes action not as a preliminary task, but as the very condition for authentic, transformative action. It clears the fog, calibrates the inner compass, and sets the stage for everything that follows. Without it, effort is scattered, misdirected, or compromised by unconscious patterns. With it, even the most audacious goals are approached with precision, intention, and courage. To cultivate this awareness, start by observing yourself without judgment. Notice the recurring thoughts that limit you, the patterns that dictate your choices, and the subtle impulses that either propel or hinder you. Reflect on what truly matters to you, beneath the noise of expectation and comparison. And in this reflection, do not seek easy comfort. Seek clarity, because clarity, more than motivation, more than talent, is what enables the unimaginable to become possible. The moment you see yourself clearly, your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, your potential, you are no longer a passive participant in your life. You are awake. And it is in this awakening that the first spark of the unimaginable ignites. There is a fundamental truth about growth and achievement that is often ignored. The path to the extraordinary is always uncomfortable. This discomfort is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is the signal that you are moving beyond the familiar, beyond the patterns that have defined your life up to this moment. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. They chase comfort, routine, and the illusion of safety, believing that stability is the measure of success. But if you are preparing to pull off the unimaginable, comfort is the enemy of transformation. Discomfort operates on multiple levels. It is not just physical, though physical exertion, sleep deprivation, or prolonged effort certainly provoke it, but emotional and cognitive as well. When you attempt something unprecedented, your mind will resist. Old fears will surface. Self-doubt will creep in with the subtle insistence that you are overreaching, that you are unprepared, that failure is inevitable. And the temptation is to retreat, to convince yourself that ease is the wiser path. But this is precisely the point at which you must pause, breathe, and recognize that the discomfort itself is the doorway. Psychologically, discomfort serves as a mirror. It reflects the areas in which you are untested, untrained, or unwilling to confront yourself fully. It exposes the boundaries you have accepted as fixed, and it challenges you to expand them. The remarkable thing is that this expansion is never smooth or painless. Growth is inherently messy because it requires the dismantling of old habits, outdated beliefs, and unconscious patterns that have kept you constrained. To resist this process is to remain in the comfortable but ultimately unremarkable life, to avoid the very friction that ignites transformation. Philosophically, we can see discomfort as a kind of invitation. Every extraordinary human achievement, from the arts to science, from leadership to social change, has demanded that the individual confront what is hard, frightening, or uncertain. The discomfort is not an obstacle to be eliminated. It is the measure of how close you are to a threshold that others rarely cross. Embracing discomfort is not masochistic, it is deeply intentional. It is saying to yourself, I will not allow fear, fatigue, or resistance to dictate the limits of my potential. In this sense, discomfort becomes a teacher, a guidepost, a necessary companion on the road to what is unimaginable. Learning to embrace discomfort also requires self-compassion and curiosity. You cannot simply push through blindly. Doing so leads to exhaustion, resentment, or burnout. Instead, observe the sensations and emotions that arise. Ask yourself what they reveal about your limits and your possibilities. Understand that discomfort is temporary, but the lessons it imparts and the growth it catalyzes are lasting. Every moment you stay present in discomfort strengthens the capacity to act decisively when stakes are high, when uncertainty is sharp, and when failure is a real possibility. Ultimately, embracing discomfort transforms your relationship with life itself. You stop fearing the unknown and begin to recognize it as fertile ground for achievement. You learn that the path to the unimaginable is never smooth, but the friction itself sharpens your mind, clarifies your intentions, and deepens your resilience. It is through discomfort that ordinary effort becomes extraordinary, that potential crystallizes into performance, and that courage is not merely a fleeting feeling, but a sustainable practice. So when discomfort arises, and it will, do not shrink. Do not search for the easiest exit. Step into it, feel it, learn from it. And in doing so, you activate the very mechanism that transforms what seems impossible into something real, tangible, and undeniably yours. Failure is a word that carries a heavy weight, one that immediately triggers shame, fear, or self-recrimination. It is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the pursuit of greatness. To attempt the unimaginable is to step repeatedly into spaces where failure is not just possible, it is inevitable. And yet, those who achieve what others consider impossible do not avoid failure. They redefine it. They see it not as a verdict on their worth or capacity, but as a signal, a guide, a source of critical information about the path ahead. When we think of failure in the traditional sense, we think of endings: a project collapsed, a plan fell apart, a goal was unmet. But failure is rarely final. It is provisional in the same way that a laboratory experiment is provisional. Each unsuccessful attempt, each mistake, each misstep is a data point. It tells you what does not work, what assumptions are faulty, and what strategies require adjustment. The remarkable achievement is not in avoiding failure, but in learning to interpret it. Those who pull off the unimaginable do so because they have trained themselves to see failure as an indispensable teacher, not a humiliator. Psychologically, this requires a profound shift in orientation. Most people avoid feedback that challenges their self-image. They confuse criticism with personal inadequacy and retreat when confronted with evidence that their approach needs revision. But if you are committed to the extraordinary, you must embrace the discomfort of feedback, even when it is painful. You must cultivate what we might call a receptive resilience, the ability to absorb lessons from failure without losing self-respect or focus. The more openly you receive this information, the more effectively you can course correct and advance. Philosophically, redefining failure is about the relationship between intention and outcome. If your goal is unimaginably high, setbacks are not deviations. They are integral components of the journey. The extraordinary life does not unfold along a straight path. It is jagged, unpredictable, and full of detours. Each detour provides insight, perspective, and refinement. What others call defeat, you recognize as part of the iterative process that gradually transforms possibility into reality. Failure is, in effect, a teacher who insists that you pay attention, think carefully, and refine your approach until your efforts align with the demands of the goal. This perspective also frees you from the tyranny of perfection. When you view failure as feedback, mistakes are no longer catastrophic, they are informative. They allow you to experiment, innovate, and stretch beyond the familiar. You are no longer paralyzed by fear of judgment or shame. Instead, you can act with curiosity and rigor, testing boundaries and exploring possibilities that were previously unthinkable. Every failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Importantly, this is not a call to recklessness. Redefining failure does not mean ignoring consequences or repeating the same errors mindlessly. It means cultivating a conscious, reflective approach to each setback. It means asking, what does this teach me about my assumptions? What does it reveal about the limits I have unconsciously accepted? How can I refine my strategy and move forward with greater clarity and precision? In this way, failure becomes a tool, not a threat, an ally rather than an adversary. So, when failure comes, and it will, do not recoil. Do not hide from it or take it personally. Engage with it. Study it. Learn from it. And in doing so, transform what appears to be an obstacle into one of your most powerful sources of guidance. The unimaginable is not achieved by avoiding mistakes. It is achieved by listening to them, adapting, and persisting. Failure, when understood correctly, is the scaffolding on which extraordinary outcomes are built. Motivation is a curious thing. Most people think of it as a fuel that comes and goes, something that must be manufactured or artificially sustained. But the truth is more profound. Motivation is not merely about energy or willpower. It is about alignment. It is about whether the actions you are taking resonate with the deeper values and truths of who you are. When you pursue the unimaginable, superficial motivation, driven by convenience, comfort, or external approval, will fail you every time. Meaning, however, endures. Meaning sustains effort when enthusiasm wanes, when setbacks occur, and when the road stretches long and uncertain. The problem with convenience-driven motivation is subtle but insidious. It whispers promises of ease, pleasure, and immediate reward, lulling you into a cycle of short-term satisfaction. We live in a culture obsessed with efficiency and instant gratification. And so it is tempting to measure success by what is easiest or most expedient. But the extraordinary life, the life that achieves what others deem impossible, requires more than expedience. It requires a commitment to values that may feel inconvenient, uncomfortable, or even isolating. The alignment with meaning is what transforms labor into purpose and effort into transformation. Psychologically, this alignment is critical because humans are wired to seek coherence between inner values and outward action. When there is a mismatch, when your life is dictated by what is convenient or socially approved, stress, anxiety, and subtle forms of self-sabotage emerge. You may work hard, but the effort feels hollow, fragmented, or exhausting. True motivation arises when the work you do, the risks you take, and the sacrifices you endure are in service of something larger than yourself, something that resonates with the deepest layers of your identity and purpose. This is why meaning-driven action has a durability that convenience-driven action cannot match. It sustains you through discomfort, setbacks, and uncertainty because it is not contingent on external reward. It is anchored in the essence of who you are. Philosophically, aligning motivation with meaning also reframes struggle. Pain, resistance, and failure are no longer merely obstacles to be avoided. They become signals that you are pursuing something worthy. The challenges that arise along the path of the unimaginable are inevitable, but when your motivation is rooted in meaning, each challenge carries significance. It is as though life itself conspires to test whether your dedication is authentic. And the test is passed not by persistence alone, but by persistence imbued with purpose. This alignment is also a matter of choice. You cannot always control the circumstances that confront you, but you can choose the lens through which you view your effort. Are you acting to please others to avoid discomfort, or to chase superficial rewards? Or are you acting in accordance with values that are deeply personal, that awaken your intellect, your curiosity, and your sense of contribution. The difference is transformative. Motivation aligned with meaning produces resilience, focus, and clarity. It is the difference between drifting through life and stepping fully into the currents that carry you to the unimaginable. Ultimately, aligning motivation with meaning is about presence and honesty. It requires asking yourself the hard questions: why am I doing this? What am I willing to sacrifice for this pursuit? And am I acting in a way that honors my own integrity and purpose? Convenience may offer comfort, but it is meaning that offers power. The kind of power capable of sustaining you through the trials and uncertainty that lie ahead. So when you feel the pull of distraction, doubt, or ease, remind yourself of this principle. The unimaginable is not achieved through comfort or expedience. It is achieved when your actions are inseparable from your values, when your effort is an expression of purpose, and when your motivation is fueled by meaning rather than convenience. Meaning is the compass and alignment is the path. Without them, even extraordinary talent can falter. With them, even the impossible becomes inevitable. Patience is often misunderstood. It is not mere waiting, the passive endurance of time. True patience is strategic. It is a conscious, deliberate engagement with the unfolding of circumstances, with the recognition that timing shapes outcomes just as much as effort or skill. To pull off the unimaginable, you cannot simply rush. You cannot force the elements to align according to your will. There is a rhythm to extraordinary accomplishment, a subtle choreography between action and restraint, and learning to move in harmony with it is what separates those who achieve the impossible from those who merely try. Many people mistake impatience for ambition. They believe that pressing forward relentlessly, demanding immediate results, is the hallmark of progress. But this is often self-defeating. Impatience blinds you to nuance, it amplifies anxiety, and it encourages shortcuts that compromise depth and sustainability. Strategic patience, on the other hand, is an active process. It is the wisdom to know when to act, when to hold back, and when the conditions are ripening for maximal impact. It is understanding that extraordinary results rarely emerge linearly, that the arc of success is jagged, uneven, and unpredictable, and that forcing it prematurely can fracture the potential for greatness. Psychologically, patience is tied to self-regulation and emotional intelligence. The mind naturally craves certainty and quick resolution, and the tension of uncertainty can provoke fear, frustration, or despair. But those who cultivate strategic patience learn to tolerate this tension. They develop the capacity to sit with ambiguity, to observe the flow of events without becoming enslaved to immediate gratification or impulsive reaction. This is not passive acceptance. It is an active mastery of inner states, a conscious choice to remain present and attuned while external circumstances evolve. In essence, patience is a form of power, the power to act from clarity rather than impulse, from discernment rather than desperation. Philosophically, strategic patience reframes how we perceive progress. The unimaginable is rarely achieved in a single, decisive moment. It emerges gradually through a series of carefully calibrated steps, through the patient accumulation of insight, skill, and experience. This does not mean inaction, but it does mean restraint, resisting the temptation to force outcomes, respecting the complexity of the systems you are navigating, and trusting in the unfolding process. Timing matters. Just as a seed cannot be hurried into bloom, so too can the conditions for extraordinary achievement not be artificially accelerated. Strategic patience allows you to align your actions with the natural cadence of growth and opportunity. Importantly, patience also cultivates perspective. When you step back and observe the larger pattern, you begin to recognize opportunities and connections that were invisible in the heat of impulsive action. You see which efforts yield genuine progress and which dissipate energy without effect. You begin to act with precision, conserving resources for the moments that matter most. This clarity is invaluable because it allows you to direct your energy toward actions that have enduring impact rather than fleeting satisfaction. Ultimately, leveraging strategic patience is about trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, and trust in the intelligence of time. It is about recognizing that effort alone is not enough. Timing, alignment, and discernment are equally critical. When practiced consistently, strategic patience transforms anxiety into confidence, haste into deliberation, and struggle into a deliberate, purposeful journey toward the extraordinary. So as you move forward, remember this: impatience is seductive, but it is often your undoing. The unimaginable is not achieved by forcing every step, but by learning when to advance, when to wait, and when to act with precision. Patience is not weakness. It is the quiet, steady engine of extraordinary outcomes, and it is through this measured, mindful timing that the impossible becomes inevitable. When you are on the edge of the unimaginable, the path ahead is rarely clear. Maps fail, rules are incomplete, and certainty is an illusion. This is where most people falter. They look outward for guidance, for reassurance, for proof that the terrain is safe. But extraordinary achievement cannot be navigated through external validation alone. It demands trust in what is internal, in the quiet, persistent wisdom of your own mind, heart, and intuition. The inner compass, cultivated through reflection, experience, and self-awareness, becomes your most reliable guide when the world is uncertain and the stakes are high. Trusting this compass is not a matter of blind faith. It is an active, disciplined process. It begins with deep listening, noticing the subtle cues of thought, feeling, and bodily sensation that arise in response to challenges. Your mind contains layers of knowledge and insight that are often inaccessible when you are distracted, reactive, or overwhelmed. By attending to this inner guidance, you begin to discern patterns, detect opportunities, and anticipate consequences that may elude even the most sophisticated external analysis. In other words, your intuition is not mystical. It is informed by experience, observation, and the integration of subtle signals that your conscious mind may not immediately recognize. Psychologically, trusting your inner compass requires courage. The unknown triggers fear because it demands reliance on something less tangible than formulas, instructions, or precedent. Yet the unimaginable is, by definition, unfamiliar. You cannot succeed by following what has been done before. You must act in a space where experience is incomplete, where the outcome cannot be guaranteed, and where your internal guidance is the clearest indicator of direction. This is why self-trust is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Without it, hesitation, doubt, and over-reliance on external approval will paralyze you at the moment when decisive action is required. Philosophically, the inner compass is intimately tied to authenticity. To navigate the unknown successfully, you must act in alignment with your values, your principles, and your deepest understanding of what matters. External guidance may provide structure, but it cannot provide meaning. Meaning arises from the alignment of action with the core of your being. When you trust this compass, decisions are no longer about appeasing expectations or avoiding failure. They are about moving in accordance with what is true and necessary, even when that path is frightening, unconventional, or lonely. Trusting the inner compass also requires tolerance for ambiguity. In unfamiliar territory, information is incomplete, feedback is delayed, and the consequences of action are uncertain. You must develop the capacity to act decisively in the face of this ambiguity, to take responsibility for your choices, and to adapt as new information emerges. This is not impulsivity, it is discernment. It is a dynamic balance between confidence and humility, between intuition and observation, between action and reflection. Ultimately, reliance on the inner compass transforms the unknown from a source of fear into a field of possibility. When you trust yourself, hesitation diminishes, clarity emerges, and your capacity to navigate complex, unpredictable circumstances increases exponentially. Extraordinary achievement is not the result of eliminating uncertainty. It is the result of engaging with it, guided by the wisdom that resides within you. So, as you confront the unimaginable, remember this: maps will fail, rules will bend, and the world will offer no guarantees. What will guide you is not luck, not brute force, not imitation. It is the quiet, unwavering voice of your own inner compass. Trust it, follow it, and let it lead you beyond fear, beyond doubt, beyond what you once thought possible. The unimaginable is not discovered by chance. It is navigated by those who have the courage to trust themselves when everything else is uncertain.